Hi, everyone. If you're just joining, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. So if you guys have any last minute things, just go ahead and get it and we'll get started. I'm glad to see so many people who can join us tonight. We're really looking forward to this event. If you're joining through Facebook, please log into Zoom so that you can submit your questions. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Joseph Pauline Blaine, and I'm the Education Project Manager at the Tourette Association of America. Thank you again for joining this live session with Youth Ambassador Andrew Fogarty and Rising Leader Rhianna Wicken. Andrew and Rhianna will answer your questions about living with Tourette Syndrome and offer tips on virtual learning and staying connected with loved ones through the pandemic. During today's presentation, we would be very happy to hear from you and include your voice in the conversation. You may ask questions or share comments using the chat function at any time. So without further ado, I'd like Andrew and Rhianna to introduce themselves.
All right. So my name is Andrew Fogarty, and I'm a youth ambassador. I am 16. I go to Rye High School, and I am really pleased to be here today. This is going to be a really good time, and I'm excited to see everybody.
Awesome. My name is Rhianna Wicken. I was trained as a youth ambassador in 2014 and then as a rising leader in 2019. I'm currently 24 and I attend California State University, Long Beach as an anthropology major. I am now on the board of the Southern California Tourette or the Southern California chapter of the TAA, and I'm really excited to be here as well and to have this conversation with all of you.
And I'm so glad that you guys can join us today and answer a few questions. So one of our first questions is from Ileana, and her question is, what is the best thing about being a youth ambassador?
I'll do this one. I'll do this one first. So being a youth ambassador is really fun to do because you get to meet a lot of very interesting people. I've met some really fun and interesting guys and girls throughout this whole process, and it's been a really good time, whether it was like on the trip to the Capitol or whether it was at presentations or something like that. It's just been great. There's so many good people, and there's a lot of gratification that comes with it because it's something that's good, you know, and it makes me happy to do something that I think is good.
So glad to hear that.
I was going to say, I completely second what you're saying. I think the best part of being a youth ambassador and then a rising leader, first and foremost, is getting to meet so many other people around your own age that also are living with Tourette syndrome. Because as we all know, it can feel pretty isolating. And so that's wonderful. And to make so many new friends. And then it also feels really good to know that you are doing something to make a difference for a community that you're a part of and that you know so many other people are impacted by. And so it's just a really, really wonderful feeling.
That's so great. Thank you guys for sharing. Our second question comes from Janelle. She says, hello, I'm a parent of a 6-year-old boy who has been evaluated for over a year and was recently diagnosed with Tourette. He also has some anxiety OCD symptoms. We have not discussed his diagnosis with him yet, but he is extremely intelligent and knows his brain works differently from other kids his age. As someone further down the road in this journey, what advice can you give me as a mom in best supporting my son or explaining TS to him?
I can start this one if you would like. I think that first and foremost, knowing, just being very open that you are there for him. I know for me, when my tics were awful and my comorbids were kind of off the charts, just knowing that I had that safe place with my family really helped me to feel more centered in it. And as for explaining it, it really is just something that we can't control. Our tics are just something, a part of us that we can't control. And I think knowing that, and also as a parent, I think the best thing that you, excuse me one sec, that you can really do is just not ever get, I know it can get frustrating sometimes, but just try to be a safe space in that regard.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because the safer the space, the more open you are about it, the easier it is both for you and for your kid to step into it together, because it's a team effort. It's something that you're both working on as a group. Neither one of you is going to be the ringleader, you know? You're both handling different parts of it, and that's something that you just got to know. It's a partnership, and it's not something that you need to be stressed about, but something you can just talk openly about, because that's the best way to foster a good relationship.
Thank you, Andrew and Rhianna. Both just great advice that you're giving. So our next question is from Nora. How do you approach telling people you have Tourette syndrome, and how do you handle having an increase of tics in class?
That's a really good question too. Yeah, these are some really good questions. That one. So every year, before or like a week into the school year, I like to meet with my teachers and just tell them about it and let them know, like, this is what's going on. I have Tourette's, sometimes I'm gonna have off days, tough days, and that's been a really useful tool for me, because then I've always had supporters in the classroom right there, people who understand and people who sympathize with me, and can, even if they can't relate to it, they can understand, and they can be, I guess, almost a comforting beacon, which is very helpful. And it can help me manage my own tics, because, increased stress means increased tics. So decreased stress means that I'm taking less. And was the other part of the question, how do you tell?
How do you handle having an increase of tics in class?
Yeah, and how do you approach telling people?
How do you approach telling people you have Tourette syndrome? Yeah.
That was something that I struggled with when I was younger, but I found that just being open about it and letting people know is the best way, because then you're not going through every day thinking I have something to hide, because you don't. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's just something, something about you. I'm not ashamed that my hair is like this, it's just a part of who I am as a person, and that's that.
I love the way you said that. It really is just a part of who you are. I also wanted to second, when it comes to school, making sure that you let your teachers or professors know is the best possible tool that you can have in your toolbox, because you will always have somebody who at least knows what's going on. They may not fully understand it, but at least you don't have to be worried in class about that. And for me, I will say I'm 24 now, and so I've had a lot of learning to do with my TS, but at this point, I'm very, very open with it. Like, I tell complete strangers on the street about it. And I always just kind of say it very simply. I have Tourette syndrome. I make sounds and movements I can't control. Nothing I can do about it. Because very honestly, once you explain it to people, they don't really, it's like over their heads at that point. Like, they don't really bring it up again. And I would say if your tics get bad in class, For me personally, what I do is I always tell my classmates that I have TS. I didn't always, but the older that I got, the more I realized that if I just kind of let everybody know what's going on, it would just be a little bit easier for me. And so when I have bad tic days in class, I do know that I have a room of supportive people, but I also have it in my accommodations through school that I can take breaks throughout class. So, and I had to ask for that accommodation. So that way, if my tics do get really bad, I can just step out, kind of let them all out, and then come back in and be able to actually focus on whatever we're learning.
Yeah, taking walks, that's a diamond in the rough.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think having breaks in my day really, really, really made it so that I could be a much better student and also just like a happier person. Because if you're always trying to suppress your tics and focus on your tics in school, you're not going to learn anything because you always have that at the forefront of your mind. So
yeah.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so the next question is from Theodore. How do you cope with driving and tics?
So I don't drive, and I missed my permit test because of the whole pandemic. But I do know that people with Tourette syndrome, they can drive. It's often like, because it comes in different like degrees and different levels. Some people struggle with it more and have more and have tics that could be more detrimental in a car than others. Like if I was to like grimace a little bit, that's not going to affect how I drive, but some people have tics that might affect how they drive. So it all depends on the person and their specific tics.
Yeah, I fully agree. I also do not drive. I don't drive because of a very separate reason than my TS. But I have driven in the car with many a driver who had TS, and it really is just knowing your body. If you're I've had friends who, when they're having bad tic days, those are the days that they call a Lyft or an Uber or ask somebody that they know to drive them places. Or I have friends who just tic the whole way because they know their body and they know that they can handle their tics while they're driving. So I think it really just is important just to know yourself and your tics, to know whether or not it's safe for you to drive. Because like Andrew was saying, everybody's tics are different and everybody's situation is different. So just kind of knowing who you are and what's going on.
That's really great feedback from the both of you. So thank you for sharing. Our next question is, how do your siblings react to your tics?
So I can start this one if you want. I have two older sisters. As adults, they just kind of, very honestly, I come from a funny family and I have very complex vocal tics that are honestly very funny. So they just laugh along with me and they work with me. But we have kind of worked really hard over the past probably 15 years to build up our boundaries and to kind of know when we all need a break. And so if my tics are being a bit much that day, my sisters will usually just go hang out in their room, or I'll take a break. But usually they're just pretty good about them. We've never really had any conflict with the tics.
Yeah, that's never been like much of like a point of I guess controversy between my brothers and me, because we just have a really close relationship, and they've been really good to me, and they've been really working with me through this whole process just by being there and being supportive. And I feel like I owe them a lot for that. And yeah, they do a lot for me.
Sounds like you guys have some great siblings, so that's great to hear. All right, so the next question, I think many of us can relate, or if not all of us can relate. How are you dealing with virtual learning or working from home?
I can.
Oh, go ahead.
You want to start this one? Oh, I was going to say, for me, I've been both working from home and doing virtual learning since March, and we just got the notification that it's going to be all the way through next spring. And for me, the biggest things have been making sure that I am writing everything down in my planner. very often just kind of lose track of time, especially just being at home without much happening. But I would say definitely keeping a planner. And then I also utilize Google Calendar a lot and kind of use time blocks. So I try to keep a similar routine every day. So I log on to class at 9:30, for instance, and then I make sure that I'm having my lunch around the same time every day, because I know without routine, my tics go off the charts. And I just try to keep on top of it through there. So I just kind of have my days blocked out very similarly. And then I think with the virtual learning, there's a lot of downsides to it, but one positive is that we are all on camera, and we have the ability to turn them off if necessary, usually. And so for me, I have let all of my professors know that if I am ticking a lot, I'm going to turn off my camera. And so then it's kind of a positive for me, because then I can tick all I want, and I don't have to miss the lecture for a break or worry that I'm interrupting any other students.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of handling it. And I'm not going to be soft here. Online learning, it's really bad. It's not a great experience, right? But I think it's really good to just make sure that you're comfortable with your environment in which you're working. Maybe keep it ventilated with a window open a little bit, keep some fresh air going. It helps me concentrate. It helps me stay on task. Knowing where all my materials are, having everything within grasp, and standing up every once in a while so that I don't get all tense and I don't feel like I'm getting stressed. I don't know what to do, and then I start ticking. Because the worst thing I can do is sit in my chair right there for 6 hours straight. I did that. Wasn't a good experience. And I mean, you gotta take care of yourself and do things that you would do on days in which you weren't even learning. Like if you have a free period, go for a run. Make sure that you're keeping your mind and body at ease.
I definitely want to second that point. I've made it a point to schedule with myself self-care time, because when we're all working and doing virtual learning, I don't know if you've had this experience, Andrew, it kind of gets to the point where like school and work never end, and then you go to sleep. And without those boundaries, it gets a little bit overwhelming. And I know for me, last semester, I kind of burnt out pretty hard, because I was just go all the time. And then my tics were worse than they've been in years. And so I would definitely say that you should prioritize at least some period of doing something that you like. I try to do it every single day. And I make sure to go outside as well, like you were saying, because when we're all inside every day, to some extent, you have to go outside, get some vitamin D, feel the sun.
Yes. Start your day off by taking a step outside and breathing in the fresh air. I think that's the most. My mom's hearing me say this, and she's gonna quote me on this next time I wake up and I play on my phone or something. But it's really important to start your day off by getting outside and getting some fresh air, because that's how you're going to be going with the rest of your day. You're setting a precedent for how the rest of your day is going to go and how you're going to act throughout the rest of the day, and you want to start it off well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I just had one more thing that I forgot to mention with learning is when you were talking about having like a workspace and knowing where all your materials are. One thing that I cannot recommend more is try to have a similar workspace that you use every day so that your mind associates wherever you are with work. For me, it's this chair. I live in a studio apartment, so there's not many different spaces. But if I'm in this chair, I'm doing work or school or meetings. But I try not to work from bed, because if I'm working in bed, then my brain starts to associate my bed with not sleeping or relaxing. It's just work all the time. So if you have like one set area, after a while, once you're there, your body will kind of go, okay, I need to focus now.
Yes.
I definitely love all of your tips. I agree with the going outside thing. I've actually personally done that. So I think that a lot of your tips can just really apply to anyone who's watching. So thank you so much for sharing that, Andrew and Rhianna. If you're just joining us live on Facebook Live, please feel free to join us on Zoom. We have Rising Leader Rhianna and Youth Ambassador Andrew answering questions. And so for the next question, I'm going to go to the chat because Chloe had a question kind of with virtual learning. She said that, her tics get really bad in class because she can see herself taking in the camera. And since she's not allowed to turn her camera off, do you guys deal with this, and do you have any tips for her?
I would say my first tip would be if you're using Zoom for your classes. I know some classes use Google Hangout, and I'm not 100% sure if you can do this on there. But if you're on Zoom, up in the upper right corner, right corner, you can hide self view. I know when I watch myself tic, my tics get worse because I can't stop staring at them. And I don't normally know how I look when I tic. And so if you hide the self view, it can sort of help with that. But if you can't turn your camera off in class, maybe there's a chance for you to talk to your professor or your teacher and see if you can maybe not have it on the whole time. Like maybe see if you can have little breaks where you don't have to have it on. Because I found most of my professors, I have a few where you have to have your camera on, and they were all pretty willing to work with me once I explained my reasons for why I felt as though I shouldn't have it on the entire time.
Yeah, and Google Meet, I think the default is that you don't see yourself, and I know it's like you can toggle it, you can change it, and I think every point you made is very good. It's I think a lot of this is about creating communication and a mutual understanding, which is sometimes I'm having a tough time and I need to turn off my camera for a bit. Yeah, I hope you can understand and that we can figure out some sort of understanding regarding this.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, communication is absolutely key, especially online, because you don't get the chance to make those relationships with your teachers and your professors. So trying to keep open communication right now is really important.
Wonderful. Lynn has a question. How does wearing a mask all the time impact your tics?
Yeah, so my mask is over there, but like the little metal thing that's like around the nose, I have this tic where I just keep like scrunching up and like moving it. It's not because it's uncomfortable. It's like it's really nice. But I scrunch up my face because it's just slightly in my view, just like this. So like obsessively. And it gets very, very rough. That's a pretty tough one because it's like I think my first tic was a squinting tic, right? And that's like that one all over again.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that one. My mom crocheted me this like piece of, I guess it's like a little piece of fabric with buttons on it. So that way I don't have to have my mask behind my ears, because when it was behind my ears, I would go until it like crept its way up my face. And so if it's not touching my ears, I've found sometimes it just doesn't ride up as much. But I don't know if you all can tell, but I have a lot of tics in my face, my lower face. And so I've personally sometimes thought it was a blessing in disguise when I'm wearing my mask in public, or with my vocal tics, nobody knows where the sounds are coming from. It could be anybody. And so I try to like think of the positives as much as I can with that one. And it's just like hiding the tics. But I will say, like, I think they're called mask extenders. Some of those can be really useful in case your masks start to like creep up your face with that tic.
I gotta take a note of that. I need to get that.
They have them on Amazon, I think, but yeah, my mom just crocheted one with buttons, and so I just hook my thing onto the buttons like down here, and then I'm good to go.
That's awesome. All right. So another question that we have is from Ayla. I have tics a lot at night, so most nights I can't sleep. Do you have any tips?
So back to the idea of like things in your environment that can cause tics, like stress, anxiety, all these different things. I think a great way to get to the heart of the problem may be to address things that might stress you out or might make you anxious. Maybe meditation, not kidding, it is so good. It is so helpful. Mindfulness, you just get calm, all very at peace. I'm not even kidding. I'm not joking. It is such a lifesaver. And tea, I cannot stress how awesome tea is at when I'm trying to go to sleep. It's that's a lifesaver too.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing that you said. I drink tea because my tics are bad at night as well. And I drink tea before bed. I also try not to look at my social media or the news for about 2 hours before bed, because I know that if I look at that, I'm just going to get very stressed out and my tics will not calm down. So usually how I try to deal with my tics at night when they get really bad is I drink tea. I do try to focus on my breathing, and like Andrew was saying, I try to practice mindfulness at that point, and then just kind of settling in. And then one tool that I've actually used is weighted blankets are a lifesaver, because if I'm ticking a lot, once I have a weighted blanket on me, I mean, I still tick, but it's like it makes a lot of the anxiety that drives my personal tics, it really soothes them, because it's like just pressure everywhere. And so I think if you have the capacity to get or use a weighted blanket, those can be really, really helpful.
So I'm going to ask one of our previously submitted questions. How have you been staying connected to your friends and loved ones during the pandemic?
I can start.
Go ahead. Yeah, you start.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. I can start. I have been doing a couple of different ways to try to stay connected. The first one that I had never used before is something called Discord. It's like an app. I'm gonna sound like a very old person explaining it. It's like an app that you can also get on your browser, and you kind of create like channels where you can all just talk on there, but there's also like little separate sub channels that you can talk about like different subjects. And I found that those like really help me keep connected to my friends. Like I have one where it's like general chat, anything that we want to rant about, memes. And so that's a good way for me to do that. And then also just reaching out to your friends. As ridiculous as this sounds, I have like, if I want to reach out to people and I haven't thought or I haven't talked to them in a little while, sometimes I'll just like write a list of my friends that I want to make sure to reach out to that week. And then I just go through it and make sure that I talk to everybody that I wanted to that week, just to make sure that I'm not missing out on connecting with any of my friends or family, because I do have a very big family. So those are pretty much like the biggest ways. Netflix watch party is also a blast, because you can just watch TV or movies with your friends and family, right? Just from your computer.
That I'm honestly taking notes from that, because I personally did have a tough time like staying in contact with people and staying up to date with everything. So I can totally relate to that struggle. It's something that I wish I had been more involved in and more forward with. But it's stressful to try to multitask like the pandemic, everything, and staying in contact with people. But I think those are some very good points.
Yeah, I will say that Discord too, it's like a low key way, so you don't have to constantly be texting people, because I know I get very overwhelmed if I have too many texts, and then I just don't respond to any of them because I kind of just panic and I'm like, I can't anymore. Yeah. But just a low key way just to try to stay in contact is great.
I agree with Andrew. I was definitely taking notes as well. So you gave some new things that I think we could all kind of use to stay connected with our friends and family. Great. So the next question I have is, what is the best advice you have ever been given about handling your Tourette as a kid, as a young adult?
I think someone once told me, just don't care what other people think. That relieves so much stress. It's hard to be like to not care. It's hard to say, you know what, it doesn't matter. But once you start to think and you start to convince yourself, you know what, that really doesn't matter. If you really care so much, then you're not worth the time it'll take to talk to you. You know, but if you want to learn, I'll tell you. So not taking people's rude criticisms and judgments at heart, because it's tough. you know you can't have somebody who doesn't experience something try to criticize the experiences of other people. It just doesn't really uh, add up, in my opinion, and I feel like that's helped me stay more confident.
I will say, I don't know if we were talking to the same person, but I received very similar advice. I was diagnosed late, and so I was diagnosed in high school. So, and we all know that high school can be relentless, is a word for it. But one thing that has been told to me many times that I find helpful is that TS almost gives us an advantage to find out whether or not people are good people, because if they're going to care enough and they're going to be nasty about my tics, or they don't want to be my friend because I have tics, I probably wouldn't have wanted to be their friend anyway. Because in that case, it's like, I don't know, anybody that thinks poorly of me or thinks poorly of my tics, they obviously have something else going on where it's not my problem. And so I would say that that was always really helpful to me, to think of that, the fact that just, if they don't want to deal with all of this, then I really don't need them in my life. And that was probably the best advice that I received.
Yeah, if they don't have the time to listen to what you have to say and to understand what you're going through, then you don't have the time to take what they're saying to heart, because it's not important.
Exactly. And for every negative person, there's always going to be so many more good, positive people. And that's really important to keep in mind, especially when there's a lot of negativity in the world, that, there's always going to be people that will not care about your TS, but that won't see it as anything other than just a part of who you are.
That's just incredible advice both of you gave. And I'm sure there's some, a younger person listening right now and is just so happy that you let them know that so that they can take that advice in their life. So thank you so much for sharing. One of the other questions that we have is, and I think you might have mentioned it a little bit, but what advice do you have on educating your teachers and your classmates about Tourette syndrome?
Do you want to start this one?
You know what? I would love to. So I covered this, I said a little bit about this earlier, but about a week into every school year, I like to sit down with my teachers and just talk to them about it. I'm not asking them anything, of them anything. I'm just telling them, like laying it out and being like, this is what it is. I want you to know and to understand what's going on within my head if something seems off, so we can partner through this together. Because a teacher and a student have to be able to work together, or else school year is not going to be very very good, and it's not going to be a very good learning experience.
I mean, essentially, that's exactly it. I always, especially in college, I always try to find a time during my professors' office hours. And I found that through virtual learning, a lot of professors are offering office hours via Zoom. And I always just go into their office hours and kind of just lay it out. And one thing that I always let them know is, it's like, listen, if I'm ticking, if I'm moving a lot, making weird noises, I'm fine. Like, I'm okay. And that if I need help or if I need something from you, I'll let you know, because I have had that experience where I didn't say that. And one of my professors was like, are you okay? All the time. And so I always just try to let them know, like, it's just kind of what I do. If I'm not okay, I'll let you know. but just keeping that open communication and making sure that they know that I'm I'm telling them in order to be a better student, so that they know that I am trying at least to be open.
The last thing you want to do is have the first conversation about it when it's getting bad, you know, because if you're at the bottom, you got to dig your way all the way out. But if you feel like things are getting harder, but you've already established this communication, then you're not going to get to the same lows because you're going to work through it in a partnership, and that's very valuable.
Exactly. And I would say, especially in college, professors are a lot more likely to be a little bit more lenient with you if you are upfront long before you need anything. So if I need an extension per se, and I let them know, and they know that I have TS, and I let them know like a couple of days before, hey, my tics are acting up, can I have an extra day or two? They're a lot more likely to give me that extension because they knew it beforehand that I have TS and that I may need some accommodation, instead of me being like, listen, I have TS, this is what's happening, can I have an extension? So I would say that trying to be as open as possible, as early as possible, is important. But it's also good to note that disclosure is completely up to you. So you only tell your professors or your teachers as much as you're comfortable telling them. Don't feel like you need to tell them more than you're comfortable with. I realized we hadn't mentioned that, and I feel like that's very important for everyone.
Thank you for mentioning that, Rhianna. Another question that we have from the chat is from Isabel. She asks, do you guys have any tips for dealing with tic attacks or self-harm tics?
I have advice for my personal tic attacks and self-harm tics, but they may be different than yours. My personal self-harm tics are I punch myself very hard in the hips and in the face. And I found that the best way that I can try to manage that is, we all know that if a tic is coming, the tic is coming. And you can try your best to change it slightly, but sometimes that tic will still come out, especially if you're mid-tic attack and you can't stop. One thing that I have found is that if I use pillows or something else that's soft and put it in between myself and my fist, I was going to say and the tic, but that's an odd way to phrase it. It can give me the sensation of the tic without being as forceful. But I know sometimes that doesn't work either. So it really is just up to what your tic feels like at the moment. But when I'm having like full tic attacks where it's a long time, nonstop, no breaks, I'm just going to reiterate again, my weighted blanket, if I get under that, sometimes, I mean, I'll still be ticking like horribly, but it'll sometimes help it so that the tics aren't as super intense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when tics get to the point where they're that overwhelming, my only and best advice will be to go sit outside, close your eyes and just have some deep breaths. I'd do that for several minutes. I think that's something serene, something that will calm you down, take your nerves down, and make things easier to process. And it won't be easy, of course, to sit still or even close your eyes, but make an effort, and it will get easier as you do it more and more, because it's a habit that I think everybody should do. Meditation, meditation, meditation.
I fully agree. And one other thing that I find important, especially during tic attacks, is if you do live at home or you live with family, I find it useful I've had to sit down and kind of talk to my family about like what I need during those times, because when I had my first big tic attack, very obviously my parents were panicked. And I feel like their stress made my tics so much worse. And so maybe sitting down, if you know that you're having tic attacks much more frequently, or even before you have, hopefully you'll never have a really bad tic attack, but if you haven't had one and your tics are getting steadily worse, maybe sitting down and talking to your family or the people that you live with about like ways to non-panicked handle the situation. And even if that's just like, are you okay? Can I help you? Is there anything I can get for you? Because having a plan in place for when that happens is really good. Because I know when I'm mid-tic attack, I cannot talk. So trying to plan beforehand is always good.
That's some great advice. And I'm sure there's some parents listening who are going to take that into account. So for everyone who's watching, we are getting to the end of our questions. So if you have any other questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to ask that in the chat box. One of the other questions that we have is, how do you manage and organize your school days?
So I manage and organize my school days poorly. I could always do better, and I know what I should do, but the stress often can take over. But the things that I know I should do and the things that I know that everybody should do is to wake up every morning with a plan, and don't be afraid if you deviate from that plan, because things are going to happen, stuff's going to change, but be aware that stuff's going to change and have that be part of your plan. Don't be worried that this is a thing that's tough for me. Don't be worried if you need to change an idea or you need to put something off for a half hour. It's natural. It's all a part of being in school, compromising, and it's something that I think is going to benefit me if I can master it later on in life, because you can never predict everything. You can just see what you can write things down, you can say, this is what I'm going to do. But when things don't go that way, because let's be real, usually things aren't going to go exactly as you plan. You just got to compromise and don't get stressed out.
I will second that. Going into the day, having a plan. I know I spoke at the beginning a little bit about using a planner and how I block out my days with Google Calendar. But I know that college is quite a bit different than high school, and your class load is very different. So some things that I really, really recommend is try to make your plan for the next day the night before, and have that already in your head the night before. So that way, when you wake up in the morning, you kind of know what's going on. And then what I like to do the night before as well is do like prioritizing my top 3 things that I have to get done. And I know that throughout the day, maybe I'll have like 9 or 10 tasks. If I'm having an off day and I know that I cannot successfully complete my whole to-do list, which is, let's be honest, it's a very stressful time. Most days I cannot complete my to-do list. I know that there's those specific things that are more important. So I usually like make my top 3 things that are like due very soon, or that I have to get done that day. So that way I still feel accomplished, because I know some days where I don't do all of my tasks, I feel like I didn't accomplish anything, and it does get me down. So I find that really helpful. And then also try to make sure that you're scheduling time for your homework and for studying and reading, because I know last March I was just blocking out my class periods, and then I was like, and then I'm good to go. And I didn't factor in the fact that I would have 100 to 200 pages of reading a week and all of my assignments. And so that got very overwhelming because I didn't have like a set time to work on it. So I never thought about it. Especially with right now, I'm very, very, very like pro write everything down, because they will slip out of your mind.
Write everything down 2 or 3 times.
Oh yeah. I have Post-it notes. Like I have stickies that I just like put all over my walls, that I'll write something down that I need to remember, and I just stick it somewhere, because if I see it, then I'll remember it. But if I don't see it,
the truth is though, if it's not in my phone and my agenda, I'm not going to remember it.
Yeah. I am the same exact way.
All wonderful tips. So write everything down. That's amazing. Okay, so I'll go back to the chat. There are a few more questions that came in. Isabel asks, she said first, thank you for sharing those tips. And if you don't mind sharing, how have you guys dealt with medication and Tourette?
I
And
mean,
only
I
if you
can,
guys feel comfortable with sharing.
for sure, I can start. So I tried, my neurologist and I worked together and we tried a lot of the different medications for Tourette syndrome. But the way that my body personally deals with meds is I usually grab on to every side effect. And so for me, I ended up probably when I was around 21 choosing that for the moment, the tics are not worse than the side effects. So I am currently not on meds for my TS. That may change in the future because I very much see medication as just like a tool to help our bodies. But for right now, I am choosing to not be medicated for the TS.
Yeah, so how our minds and our bodies express and handle Tourette changes, especially in like adolescence, because your brain is constantly changing. There's like pruning, there's growth, there's everything. And because of that, medications aren't going to consistently work. At least one medication won't. For a lot of people, at least. For me, I've had on off, because I took a medicine that was for Tourette, but it started interfering with my like ability to focus and concentrate, and so I stopped for a little while. But then my tics started getting bad, so then we went back on it, and it's been kind of like a flip flop. But I feel like that's something that will kind of level out if when we find a medication that works and my brain stops growing.
Thank you both for sharing that. We have another question from Janelle. She asks, how do I handle tics that are extremely disruptive? She's the mom of a newly diagnosed 6-year-old, and he currently has a tic that she says is blood curdling, a scream, and that his 4-year-old brother often cries and yells that it's too loud. So she wants to know how to handle those types that might be disruptive.
So to address like the idea of the brother and the relationship with this, I feel like it's always best to educate and to introduce this to the person who has Tourette and the siblings, like the family members, together, because they're experiencing the same thing just from different sides, you know? And so it's important that they have the same understanding as the person who has Tourette, because that will not only help them understand, but it'll help them be able to communicate with each other and to understand what the other person is saying, because they have the same education and same experiences.
I mean, yeah, I fully agree. And then as for kind of how to address it, when it comes to really, 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 I want to just say bad tics that are either loud or frightening, we can't control it. And I know I had to have that conversation with my family where I was just like, because I had some very, very, very loud, out of nowhere screaming tics. And it's just one of those where I don't want to say that there's nothing to be done, because, there's always hope that the tic might change or different skills that you can work on to minimize or change the tic. But I think just like we were saying earlier, just being there and being a safe space. I know my tics were always way worse at home and way louder at home because it was a safe space. So, I mean, yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
Thank you for sharing. So going back to the chat, Chloe and Sophie, they have kind of similar types of questions. It has to do with ticking in public. Chloe says, when it comes to ticking in public, how do you deal with anxiety coming from that? I personally find that on bad days when I have to go out I get overwhelmed with anxiety and fear of others' reactions. And then Sophie, she says, how do you handle offensive tics in public? I'm scared of people not understanding and just thinking I'm being rude.
Yeah, those are some really good questions that I think I need to think about a little bit,
Go ahead,
because
take some time.
that's something that definitely applies to like everyday
Yeah.
living. But
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say, do you want to go first? Because I have to think of the best. Because I mean, obviously, we all have the tools that we use to deal with being out and about and taken away. One thing that I've kind of started to do, it didn't start until I was probably in my 20s, is I have kind of like a overpowering, because I get very, very bad anxiety, but if I tell myself something enough, sometimes I start to believe it, and I just go, I don't care. And I just keep saying that to myself. And even if I'm like the whole time, for me, if I just try my best to not think about the negative, it can help. But like I said, I've had to work really, really hard on tools surrounding my anxiety to get to that point. But as for offensive tics in public, it really depends on the tic. I have a lot of tics where I show my middle finger and I like emphatically shove it at people. And I have quite a few tics where I repeat curse words. And so for those, usually I would just try to cover it with my other hand, or I'll just literally, as ridiculous as it sounds, I'll go like this and whisper it to myself, like if I'm by myself and I'm that worried about it. But if I'm out with friends, usually I can just try to direct it at one of them, and then people just think that we're just a group of cool people. I don't know. I was going to say a group of teens, but I haven't been a teen in 5 years. So.
So I don't know how qualified I am to answer the second question, because I don't personally have any tics that I guess would be considered offensive, like corporalia or things of that nature. But I feel like the main idea of these two can kind of go back to the idea of, if people want to understand, they can ask me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But if people don't have the time to ask me, then I don't have the time to care what they think.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, if somebody says something, especially out in public, what I found is like, if somebody says something to me, I'm never going to see them again, usually. And so I try my best, like how I was saying, is I'm just like, I don't care, I don't care. A big part of that is because I'm like, what is this person to me? How are they impacting my life? So yeah.
One thing first of all, just thank you guys for your bravery and courage in answering that question. It was really insightful. One thing I do want to mention, from the Tourette Association, we do offer kind of the IFTS cards. So I've heard from some people, sometimes in public situations, they may kind of just take their card out and show it to people who may not understand. So that's also one option I can give to let everyone know. And if you'd like that resource, we'd be more than happy to share that with you. So I know we are kind of getting towards the end, so I have one more question for you guys, and you've just been doing such a phenomenal job. But my last question for you is, what is one piece of advice that you wish someone had told you when you were diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, and that you'd like to share with someone else?
I don't know if it is a good one. And I don't know if this is advice as much as just something that I wish someone had told me, is that none of this is my fault. None of my tics, nothing that's going on, I didn't cause it. I didn't do anything wrong. And I think it's important to remember sometimes, especially when we all have those days where we feel like our tics are ruining our lives. We all know those days where it's just like, and it's just important to remember that like, we did nothing wrong. This is just the way we were born. And honestly, I've found that embracing it and just kind of making it, like I said, I come from a funny family, so all of my tics are usually just like big and loud and out there. And I really do wish that when I had first been diagnosed, that somebody had told me that like I didn't do anything to cause it, and there's nothing wrong with me, nothing, and there's nothing wrong with any of you. It's just something we have.
I think that's a very, very great point. And for me, I feel like it would have been very useful to just hear that people are going to understand, or people are not going to go out of their way to be mean. I always went through every day fearing, before like I was really open about it, fearing that people were just going to like attack me all the time. But I feel like there's so many more good people in the world than bad people. At least good people enough to not make you feel bad about yourself for your Tourette, even if they don't understand what it is, especially if they don't understand what it is. And there's just a lot of stress, unnecessary stress, that is carried as baggage when every day when I go outside, I used to think, all right, one slip up and somebody's going to call me a lunatic, you know? But that doesn't happen to me. Maybe I've been in a good situation, but I've found that that is something that I should have known, because I would have found every day a lot easier, not looking over my shoulder and just being more relaxed.
I totally agree with that. And it is also important to keep in mind that all of us are going to be okay. All of us. There are so many amazing, incredible adults living incredibly amazing lives, and all of us we're going to be okay. So, yeah.
And things are going to be hard. There's going to be hard times. Sometimes stuff is going to go downhill, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be okay, because there's always going to be an uphill.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to end this. Wow. Thank you so much, Rhianna. Thank you so much, Andrew. You guys did such a phenomenal job. And I think there was amazing advice and just tips that you gave to everyone. We're just so super proud of the both of you, and just want to thank you again for taking your time today to speak with us and share with us your insights. To everyone else, thank you so much for joining. We do have a survey, and if you'd be so kind to answer, the information that we get from the survey really does help us improve our programming, and we're able to offer some amazing programs like this today. So thank you so much, everyone. And one last thank you to both you, Rhianna, and you, Andrew. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.